everybody, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! Master 88 here, and welcome to the newest episode of Linux History Shorties. And like I promised all, we are covering Slackware. So without further ado, let's get started with the newest edition of Linux History Shorties. Slackware is a Linux distribution created by Patrick Volkerding in 1993. Originally based on soft landing Linux system, Slackware has been the basis for many other Linux distributions, most notably the first versions of SUSE Linux distributions, and is the oldest distribution that is still maintained. Slackware aims for design, stability, and simplicity, and to be the most Unix-like Linux distribution. It makes as few modifications as possible to software packages from upstream, and tries not to anticipate use cases or preclude user decisions. In contrast to most modern Linux distributions, Slackware provides no graphical installation procedure and no automatic dependency resolution of software packages. It uses plain text files and only a small set of shell scripts for configuration and administration without further modification. It boots into a command line interface environment because of its many conservative and simplistic features. Slackware is often considered to be the most suitable for advanced and technologically inclined Linux users. Slackware is available for the IA32 and x86-64 architectures with a port to the ARM architecture. While Slackware is mostly free and open source software, it does not have a formal bug tracking it does not have a formal bug tracking. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out this one word. Please forgive me, people. It does not have a formal bug tracking fidelity or public code repository, with releases periodically announced by Volkerding. There is no formal membership procedure for developers, and Volkerding is the primary contributor to releases. So this pretty much right here, people, explains the name, the origin of the name and all that. I'm not going to really go much into detail about that. So let's get into the real meat and stuff, the birth of the operating system and the development. Slackware was originally derived from the soft landing Linux system, the most popular of the original Linux distributions and the first to offer a comprehensive software collection that comprised more than just the kernel and basic utilities, including X11 graphical interface, TCP and IP, and UUCP networking, and GNU Emacs. Patrick Volkerding started with SLS after needing a Lisp interpreter for a school project at the then named Morehead State University. He found CLIS was available for Linux and downloaded SLS to run it. A few weeks later, Volkerding was asked by his artificial intelligence professor at MSU to show him how to install Linux at home and on some of the computers at school. Volkerding had made notes describing fixes to issues he found after installing SLS, and he and his professor went through and applied these changes to a new installation. However, this took almost as long as it took to just install SLS, so the professor asked if the install disks could be adjusted so the fixes could be applied during installation. This was the start of Slackware. Volkerding continued making improvements to SLS, fixing bugs, upgrading software, automatic installation of shared libraries and the kernel image, fixing file permissions, and more. In a short time, Volkerding had upgraded about around half the packages beyond what SLS had available. Volkerding had no intentions to provide his modified SLS version for the public. His friends at MSU urged him to put his SLS modifications into an FTP server, but Volkerding assumed that SLS would be putting out a new version that included these things soon enough, so he held off for a few weeks. During that time, many SLS users on the internet were asking SLS for a new release. So eventually, Volkerding made a post titled, "Anyone want an SLS like 0.99 P PL11A system?" To which he received many positive responses. After a discussion with the local sysadmin at MSU, Volkerding had obtained permission to upload Slackware to the university's FTP server. The first Slackware release, version 1.00, was distributed on July 17, 1993 at 1636 UTC, and was supplied as 24 3.5-inch floppy disk images. After the announcement was made, Volkerding watched as the flood of FTP connections continually crashed the server. Soon afterwards, Walnut Creek CD-ROM offered additional archive space on their FTP servers. In April 2004, Volkerding added Xorg server packages into the testing directory of current as a replacement for the X386 packages currently being used. With a request for comments on what the future of the X Windows system in Slackware should be, a month later he switched from X386 to Xorg server after stating that the opinions were more than 4-1 in favor of using Xorg release as the default version of X. He stated that the decision was primarily a technical one, as X386 was proving to cause compatibility problems. Slackware 10.0 was the first release with Xorg server. In March 2005, Volkerding announced the removal of the GNOME desktop environment in the development changelog. He stated this had been under consideration for more than 4 years, and that there were already projects that provided a more complete version of GNOME for Slackware than what Slackware itself provided. Volkerding stated future GNOME support would rely on the community. The community responded, and as of October 2016, there are several active GNOME projects for Slackware. These include Cinnamon, Dackware, Dropline GNOME, Mate, and Slackmate. The removal was deemed as significant by some in the Linux community due to the prevalence of GNOME in many distributions. In May 2009, Patrick Volkerding announced the public development release of an official 86/64 variant called Slackware 64. Maintained in parallel with the IA32 distribution, Slackware 64 is a pure 64-bit distribution in that it does not support running or compiling 32-bit programs. However, it was designed as multi-lib ready. Eric Hamelers, one of the core Slackware team members, maintains a multi-lib repository that contains the necessary packages to convert Slackware 64 to multi-lib to enable running of 32-bit software. The Mailer started the 64-bit port as a diversion from the pain of recovering from surgery in September 2008. Volkerding tested the port in December 2008 and was impressed when he saw speed increases between 20 and 40% for some benchmarks compared to the 32-bit versions. To minimize the extra effort of maintaining both versions in parallel, Slackware's build scripts called Slack builds were slowly transitioned to supporting either architecture, allowing for one set of sources for both versions. Slackware 64 saw its first stable release with version 13.0. Between the November 13th release of 14.1 and the June 16th, Slackware saw a 31-month gap between releases, marking the longest span in release history. During this time, the development branch went without updates for 47 days. However, on April 21st, 2015, Patrick Volkerding apologized on the changelog for the absence of updates and stated that the development team used the time to get some good work done. There were over 700 program changes listed on the changelog entry, including many major library upgrades. In January 2016, Volkerding announced the recruitant edition of Pulse Audio primarily due to BlueZ dropping direct also support in 5.x, while various other projects were in turn dropping support for Blues 4.x. Knowing some users would not be happy with the change, he stated that bug reports, complaints, and threats can go to me. These changes culminated with the release of Slackware 4.2 in 2016. And if you all want to read the rest of this fabulous Slackware article from Wikipedia, feel free to. And with that, people, that is it for this edition of Linux History Shorties. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and until next time, this is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master 88 saying see you later.